Hello, my dear friends, my lovely audiences. Welcome to the East-West Show. Jack Chow's my name. Here, once again, we're talking about bad laws versus community safety. For several times during the last few weeks, we had shows, we had discussions about how the bad laws kind of like related to our community safety. There are lots of occurrences, lots of incidents that are happening due to the early release of criminals according to jail realignment system, the bad laws. And well, things are still not getting any better. So with my friend Joe Gardner, former Santa Monica PD officer for 27 glorious years, we're sharing his thoughts once again on this issue. Joe Gardner, it's his name, my brother, kind of friend for many, many years. So welcome, Joe, to the show.
It's always great to be on your show, Jack.
Very good. Mr. Joe Gardner, to all my respect, has been servicing in Santa Monica PD for 27 years. Right upon retirement, he started picking up programs of West Covina, putting Meals on Wheels for the people who need it. To those, I give him a big applause because this is really grassroots program. Even though the federal is trying to cut down the funds, but we still believe that with the thing that can fly, that will still fly. That's not our subject today, though. We're talking about community safety versus the bad laws, right? So, for those who have not watched our shows previously, I would like you to bring a basic understanding. When we say bad laws, what do we mean? When we say community safety, what do we mean? When we say bad laws versus community safety, what do we mean, please?
Well, Jack, as you know, and anybody who watches the news, the nightly news, you see proliferation of pursuits, violent crime, things that are going on in our communities that, should give any citizen concern. And I think the contributing factor, we're seeing the residual effect of crime impacting our neighborhoods, our communities. And it is, as you say, because of some bad laws that are taking place out there. AB 109, prison realignment, that was, went through the state legislature in 2011, has released thousands of prisoners into the local communities. And coupled with that, we had a ballot proposition, Proposition 47, that was passed by the voters that even releases more prisoners. And soon we will see the impact of Proposition 57, which is going to release even more prisoners on top of that. So as each of us, are in our communities and are driving through our neighborhoods, we see some of that residual effect of crime, and I think it should give every citizen a real need for concern. And I think we're reaching a tipping point. If you ask citizens, they're concerned about crime, but unfortunately, some of those ballot propositions were implemented, were misguided, and with less information to the voters, and the voters, did their civic duty, but voted, I think, improperly.
Yes, you're right. Thank you very much for the explanation. To my audiences, I want to share with you that even during the ballot of Proposition 47 and 57, that was last year, and the propaganda was that for better community and for just to make sure the bad guys are locked up. They're not saying that the less bad guys are out on the street. They're not saying that they are releasing a bunch of bad guys on the street. They're only saying on one focus, say the bad guys are locked. That it's very, very kind of like not clear about who are you locking up, who are you releasing. Now, followed by the incidents of Whittier, a police officer shot down to death, and in many instances there before and after, we're starting to see the consequences. That makes us to worry about the community safety. That is why we call this show Bad Laws versus Community Safety, right? So I remember last time you were here, you were comparing about the numbers of the years, and this year, starting the 2015, including 2016 and 2017 so far, we see a surge of criminal rate, right?
Right. Yeah, crime is steadily going up across LA County and throughout the state of California. And you know, many in law enforcement will tell you, police chiefs and others will say that it's a direct, residual effect of those laws, those bad laws that you talk about, prison realignment and those two propositions.
I remember last time when we had this discussion, we touched some numbers. Among the 65 cities of the 88 in Los Angeles County, there is an increase of crime rate from 16% to all the way to 61% in some cities.
In some areas, yes.
In some areas, including Pasadena, including El Monte, including Rosemead, including all those nearby cities. We see a overall kind of surge of a crime rate. So this is so unhealthy and this is so risky, right? So as police officers, when you were in PD, when you see such a rise of criminal rate, though, what do?
Well, we try to do our job. Unfortunately, police officers are often driven by what they call the radio queue. And that radio queue is the number of calls that sit in the dispatch center that go unanswered, that are waiting for a response by a police officer. And if something significant happens, and often does, you know, you have a police pursuit where many officers will get involved in that, or you have a hostage situation or some barricaded suspect, that draws away a lot of resources. But that doesn't stop the calls coming into the police department for help.
You're right.
So, you know, it could overwhelm many police departments. Their officers do the level best they can, but if they, you know, can't get to those calls, they're going to sit there. And that's the unfortunate thing. And we're seeing more and more of those calls come into dispatch centers, from petty theft crimes all the way up to very serious robberies and violent felony crimes. So
that's why people complain it takes forever for them to arrive.
Right.
Because they're clogged up.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So to be more specific, we in West Covina, we're talking about our own neighborhoods, right? And in our vicinities, our nearby neighborhoods, right? How do you compare our area to areas like Pasadena, to areas like LA, including East LA, or South LA, or to areas in like Whittier or Orange County? Right. How do you assess the safety figure of our city?
Well, I think local municipalities like West Covina, Whittier, and some of the smaller cities, they do a very good job. Some of them, for West Covina, for example, they have a limited number of officers, and I think they're about up to 97 officers now. But we have 105,000 people in the city.
You're
so by those figures, if you do a ratio analysis, that really says that we should be maybe a lot more.
Not even thousand, not even 1 per 1,000.
Yeah.
Not even 1 per 1,000. Yeah.
Right. So, you know, those officers are out there, they're dedicated, doing good work, but the problem is there are not enough of them, unfortunately. And couple that with the crime rate increasing, you know, and criminals know this. They know when it's easy to go to some community and do their crimes, because they know perhaps there's going to be a slow response, or, you know, perhaps bedroom communities are going to be less attentive because they think they're relatively safe. As we see in the valley, we have a number of burglaries on very expensive homes, and people are getting cleaned out. Celebrities, right? You've probably heard about some of those.
Course. But,
So cities have a tough time trying to maintain because of staffing issues and also the rise in crime. You have those two combinations that makes it really difficult.
Thank you very much. My dear audience, today we're touching base with you about our community safety versus the bad laws. Bad laws, matter of fact, is the mother of the community safety, the community unsafety issue. And well, joining me today is my good friend, Joe Gardner, retired LA, retired, I keep sending you back to LA, retired Santa Monica PD officer, and who's still on the issue. He's very, very vocal on this issue against the bad laws. So stay with us. We'll be right back, please. Hello, dear folks. Welcome back to the discussion about our community safety versus the bad laws. Joining me, my friend, Joe Gardner, former Santa Monica PD officer for 27 glorious years, and now still servicing the community otherwise. He's here share with us about how the bad laws are related to our community service, community safety, which has deteriorated the community safety and makes people worry so much. Okay, question. At the above level, at the level above, at the state legislature, in Governor Brown's office, right, of those whoever are the creators of the laws, are they aware of the fact that they are bad laws?
I think they are. They advocates throughout the state have really said that there are some issues that need to be fixed as far as crime and protections of our community. But in some respect, I think they really don't care. It doesn't. It's not within their agenda. Unfortunately, the governor could remedy the issue of the criminal justice system and making sure that we have the resources to incarcerate those people that commit crimes. But he really hasn't put the money that should go into that. And at many other levels, our infrastructure, the money is not going to where it needs to go. So I, to some respect, have to wonder what's going on in Sacramento. And I think they have their own agenda, and it doesn't include the citizens. So.
After all, in the country with a democracy, the core issue is representation.
Right.
Right? Once you're talking about you're represented by them, though, they have to listen to you. Right. The thing is that when you voice out, tell them, hey guys, what you're doing is wrong, and those you produce are bad laws, or they make the public safety, community safety even worse, that they got to listen to. I'll give you an example. It was a day ago, 2 days ago, I had this show with Mr. Peter Choi, chairman of Chamber of Commerce of Temple City, and also Marianne Maloney. She is the founder and the CEO of Kayla. They're talking about their day at the Capitol. They, together with a group of 150 or plus business owners, were there on the steps of Sacramento of the state government to let them know that California justice system is being clogged up by those frivolous lawsuits, those cases that made nothing, that made no sense, or except making the lawyers rage. And they are the ones that clogging up the legal system, justice system. So they demanded that the laws be rewritten. They demanded those laws are bad laws. They're talking about ADA laws, right? And the ADA supplemental laws or stuff like that, right? Yeah. So I'm thinking about if in California, the group are going against the bad laws. If you put together some voices going to Sacramento do the same thing, they will hear about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important. As you talk about the American Disabilities Act, it's been constantly manipulated by people who will go and create frivolous lawsuits on businesses and wreak havoc. I mean, you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, and then oftentimes small businesses, they can't afford that. They may have something that's not quite right in their restrooms, or they don't have handrails, or the mirror's too high. You know, it's just craziness. And you're right, when there are bad laws, we should have our representatives listen to us. We have something on our flag. The California flag says it's a California Republic. And what that means is that when we send somebody to Sacramento, they should pay attention to us. Right.
Who they say represent. Right?
Exactly.
Okay, now, so bad laws are bad law themselves, and they may get even worse in case that, take the ADA law, for example. All right, the law going in the wrong direction, that's one issue. By going in the wrong direction, they do not give you time of correction.
Right.
There goes the punishment right away.
Right.
It's a punishment per finding. That's it.
And what does it do to our economy?
It doesn't do.
Yeah,
doesn't do anything.
Closed down. Yeah.
Right. Now back to the bad laws of the ADA, same as ADA. We're talking about AB 109. You were talking about jail realignment programs. So jail realignment should go with the statistics of our population, right? With crime rate. When population raise, when crime rate raise, the numbers of jails has raised. In addition, instead, they do not do the numbers, they just issue a law. That's AB 109. And AB 109 was followed by many of the, including the ballot measure of 47 and 57. Those are a bad one.
And you know
question, yeah, go ahead.
And I try to reduce them to the simplest terms. Basically, the state created this AB 109 to dump the whole problem on local communities, the county jails, because they didn't want to spend the money to build new prisons or to handle that problem anymore. So they devised this AB 109 in simple terms to basically take those prisoners and say, hey, you guys deal with this. Yeah. We don't want that. We're going to wash our hands. And that is not the way to do government.
And whereas the county, the city, they do not have the jail space. For them.
They do not.
And then their only where to go is out on the street.
Right.
And on the street, they are committing crimes again, such as a Whittier officer. The guy been in and out for 2 months, 5 times already, and he's a felon, serious felon. He killed the cousin right in the very morning.
Right.
And there are 3 occurrences of the previous 2 months. Right. And that such a person is released to walk as a free man on the street. Yes, so that's why he killed the officer. So now, am I safe, or is it safe, or is it fair to say the officer died of AB 109?
It's hard to say. You know, this flash incarceration thing, which I'm concerned about, being a commissioner for Los Angeles County Probation. I have been concerned about the fact that we have people who will come in contact with the police. They will be incarcerated for a short time, 5, 10 days, and then released because, number one, there's probably maybe no justification to send them back to prison, or oftentimes, they get caught up in the system and they get released anyway. So, you know, it really poses a huge problem because I think a lot of people who commit crimes are falling through the cracks. They're not getting adjudicated. They're not being sent back to prison. So, you know, my suspicion is that, yes, that poor officer Boyer in Whittier, you know, is probably a victim of a lousy system, a criminal justice system in California that needs to be reformed.
Yeah, lots of people claim to say that the officer Boyer, he died of AB 109 as a result. right? So
many angry people.
Many angry people. They're getting so angry. They're saying, pointing fingers, AB 109. Why, in the first place, you guys should create such a law like that, crazy laws, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now, and that is followed by Proposition 47 and Proposition 57, and then in lots of department, the police department, they do the flashing incarceration, and they do it for 2 days or 3 days, whatever. Just flash, that's it.
Right.
As a token,
Right.
as a token of procedure, the guy in and out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and that's it.
It's like hockey. You put him in the penalty box for a short time, and then he goes out and plays again.
They walk out of place again.
Yeah,
so they kind of recharged, they kind of on straight, they kind of make, and then you have 47 that makes a 450 to 950.
Right.
Between still and misdemeanor.
Retailers that's driving retailers nuts because
they're
really getting their merchandise stolen at huge rates, and they realize, well, there's not much we can do. Even some criminals go in with calculators to figure out how much to steal, and that's horrible, and it drives the price of goods up. It sometimes, in some cases, will drive business owners out of business because they can't. They can't accept the loss anymore.
Number one, they have the criminals surrounding, and number two, you have lifted the threshold, right? So instead of stealing, instead of going to jail for offense for more than $450, you lift to a point and say, let's do 950. Anything below 950, you're okay. You're only misdemeanor. You're dismissed, something like that. And that's why lots of people, lots of bad guys going around with a calculator to make sure they steal the exact amount, or with a tax included, right? Not going over this 950 mark. And by not going on the $950 mark, they're okay. It is so hilarious, right? It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. So hilarious. You're not talking about California. You're doing a child play. Right. Now, all these all together, your comrades, your organization, right? Comrades who share the same concept, and your organizations making it so known, making it so well known to the public. Lots of public do not even know.
Exactly, they don't.
Lots of people do not even know. Right?
The terrible thing is the voters, God bless the voters, because they go out and they exercise their civic duty. But if they are misled in the beginning about one proposition or initiative altogether, they may make a mistake and vote for the wrong thing. And that's what we saw happen with Prop 47 and 57. I think the voters were misled. You can't read the fine print because it's, you look at the voter pamphlet, it's crazy. So.
Taking that as a lesson, the bill creators make the different definitions to hide those things.
Exactly.
To hide those things, right? In the description of 5747, they never say a word of release. They say keep them incarcerated, keep them locked up, right? As a matter of fact, they keep only a few and let the majority walk out. So that's a problem. My dear audience, I really say and strongly recommend to my audience, to my lovely audience, that you get involved. This is really something to the, I call it the last straw that breaks the camel's back. We can't go anymore. We have enough bad people. We have enough criminals who are on the street committing crime. We don't want any more. For those who are locked, they are supposed to be locked. We don't want them to be out on the street again. And for those who deserve to be incarcerated, we don't want them to be flashed for 3 days or 4 days, 5 days, and then next week you see them on the street again. So those are the problems created by the bad laws. So our community safety is at stake. And our community safety is right this very moment shaking due to the bad laws such as AB 109, Proposition 47, Proposition 57, and its supplementary laws, right? So with me today is my good friend, Joe Gardner, former Santa Monica PD officer for 27 glorious years, in and out in many situations. Thank God he is out of intact, and he's still brave. And while he is sharing his thoughts, let's take a very short moment out. When we come back, we'll find out some new stuff, new issue that occurs with the public safety. Stay with us, please. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to the discussion about public safety versus the bad laws. With me today is my good friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, a wonderful police officer of Santa Monica PD for 27 years, who keeps on servicing the community after retirement. He is sharing his views for the bad laws, such as AB 109, such as Proposition 47, such as Proposition 57, which are the ones to be blamed for, at least for some of the serious incidents whereby officers dies. Now, just while we're on it, while we're complaining about the issue, news came yesterday that in LAPD, they have proved a measure for what they call de-escalation. I was a little confused about the term. So in your term, your language, what is the escalation, what is de-escalation?
Well, de-escalation is something that police officers do every day anyway. Every encounter they have with the public, and if it turns out to be a violent encounter, you can bet that every officer out there will do his level best to de-escalate. And I should include women as well. Our women police officers will sometimes are better at this, to be able to de-escalate a situation. They do that all the time. I don't know what the formal term is with LAPD, but you can bet that those officers on that police force and throughout our county and throughout our state and even nationwide always use those tools of de-escalation to try and stop the potential of using deadly force or something that will cause harm to anybody. So I'm not clear on what de-escalation in the terms of LAPDs or the LA City issue is, but I'm telling you that they exercise that on a daily basis already.
Very good. In other words, once you say there is a de-escalation, does it mean it reverses the fact that of escalation?
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah, I think that what they're asking for is for officers to calculate in their mind at the present time whether or not there's an alternative that doesn't include having to use force or any deadly force or less lethal force, and that's a difficult thing to do, especially in the moment, to have someone within seconds have to render a decision on whether they use deadly force or not. But it's a hard issue, and it's going to make it difficult for those officers to have this.
That's exactly why the union had the worry about they might make a wrong decision because of the de-escalation requirement, and that a blink of a second, or not even a fraction of a second, they just to say if hesitated for a fraction of a second. There might be a life or death issue, right? So that's where they worry about. What I am more interested about is that exactly at the moment we're talking about this many criminals on the street, and there's news pushed out talking about the de-escalation. Do you think they kind of are coming from one source, or just by coincidence?
Well, I'm not clear on what your question might be. If the felons calculate this in their mind, and maybe they do. Oftentimes, their decision making of many criminals are pretty bad, and they will do what they will do, unfortunately. And that has an impact on you and I, and also on the lives of the welfare of those officers. So I'm not sure how much they watch the news, but I'm sure that word gets around. The prison system is like a network, and so they begin to figure out better ways to commit their crimes.
After all, it's quite natural. On one hand, you see the bad laws release the criminal on the street, and on the other, you see calls, okay, guys, come down, don't shoot. Am I right?
Yeah.
If I put them together to interpret in a sequential way, like this, am I right, being fair or not?
Well, officers deal in facts, and they see what's in front of them, and they react. And oftentimes, they want to go home every night. So they're going to do what they need to do to make sure that their safety is protected, as well as those around them. So, I don't know how much factoring goes in the criminal side of it. Officers think about this each and every day. And they run those scenarios as they're driving around town thinking about it. They do that in the squad room before they go out on their shifts, and they think about it. So officers really do a lot of work in advance of trying to figure out the safest way to make sure they get home every night.
It is, of course, quite easily understood. People like me, who has never been in a situation of that, it is kind of hard to imagine how important that fraction of a second it is.
Yes.
Right? So, during your experience over the past 27 years, how do you interpret that little moment of even a fraction of a second?
Well, we revert to training. I mean, training and what they talk about sometimes is muscle memory. You just do what you're faced with, and it's built into your career, your daily work, your supervisors, the state post, police officer standards and training provides so much material that, when that situation comes and you have to react, it just becomes not so much an emotional reaction, but just a reaction based on facts and what you see. So, I just say that officers in this state and probably in many other police departments they calculate these things all the time. They think about it each and every day, and sometimes many times a day, so that it becomes rote. It just becomes something that they just do.
Okay. Without being in the situation like that, I'm just trying to, as a bystander, to read the situation, right? And you have a criminal, criminals on the street. When you talk about escalation, you're talking about you always try to take an upper hand to suppress the situation, right? Yeah. And then if it is escalated the other side, and you still want to again escalate it, so you're kind of like always taking an upper hand of the situation. You wave a club, right? I have a taser, right? You wave a knife, I have a gun, something like that, right? Yeah. Now, when you're talking about using the term de-escalation, are you saying that you wave a club, I say, okay, put it down, okay, let's be friends, something like that? So as an officer, how do you technically or tactically explain it?
Well, I think de-escalation in my mind is a verbal de-escalation. We talk about verbal judo, right? An older term, probably 20, 30 years old. But it's the same kind of thing where officers will use a calm voice. They will use their powers of persuasion to talk somebody down from being so violent. It sometimes doesn't work, but that is part of the de-escalation process. You give enough room.
Verbal de-escalation.
Right.
As a matter of fact, you're still on 100% alert.
Absolutely.
That your hands is on your weapon, and your piece is ready to fire at any moment.
Right.
Am I right?
Right. And many times, and I could think of one circumstance that I told somebody who was really aggressive, who had a weapon in his hand, and I basically said, you don't want to do this today. You really need to calm down. This is not something you want to do. You have family. You try and bring that person down to a level to where they maybe think and reason and make a good decision not to do the violent act.
And that very moment you have your weapon on hand, right? And you can shoot at any time.
Right.
And before shooting, you want him to take a second consideration about his loved ones, about his family. You don't want to do this today.
Right.
Like that. All right. That is quite acceptable. When I first learned the word, heard the word about their de-escalation, I'm thinking about you're waving a club at me. I just, doing nothing, say, hey, let's go get a cup of tea or something like that.
Yeah. The best tool in a police officer's daily bag of things that he takes out with him is this. Right. And what he does and how he approaches people and he or she talks to people. That is the main tool that will oftentimes prevent a violent encounter.
I see. All right. My dear audience, today we're talking about our community safety. Joining me is my good friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, a former Santa Monica PD officer for 27 glorious years. He's kind of sharing with us how these bad laws influences our community safety. And yet, during the third segment, we touch a little with the new subject, which is put up by LAPD, talking about de-escalation instead of escalation as a policy or principle. Anyway, let's stay out for a little bit, and we will be back right away. Please. Hello, dear friends, my dear folks. Welcome back to the show. Today, with me is my good friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, Santa Monica PD former officer, and he served in Santa Monica PD for 27 glorious years. Upon retiring, he took up something else, and he put food on the wheels, meals on the wheels for the needy family, which has totally nothing to do with the community safety. That's another issue, another day. Today we're talking about community safety. Public safety is always the condition for your city. And I mean, first one, and you don't have public safety, you do not even want to live here, right? Okay, now, we're talking about the fact that our public safety is heavily interfered by our Californian bad laws, such as AB 109, Proposition 47, and Proposition 57 out of the ballot, right? So we see consequences. We started to see consequences starting 2015, and for an entire 2016, and that includes the first season of 2017. We see crime increase substantially. To deal with that, we're talking about how we want to, number one, reverse the bad laws. Number two, we want to see that we can reduce the consequences. Now, we moved to a point that LAPD pushed a de-escalation, they call it project or something, amongst their officers. And very controversial. Some even worry about if we de-escalate, how about our own safety? Right. I'm sharing this. I'm asking my friend Joe Gardner, as a police officer, about that precise moment for one officer to decide to escalate or de-escalate. Right. So, I know that that very precise moment is so important. Right. And then just now I heard you mention a term called the muscle memory.
Right.
How do you explain that, please?
It's when you do something over and over again, you go to the gym, right, and you learn the proper way to lift weights, right? And your trainer, if you have a trainer, will tell you this is how you need to do it and the speed you have to do it, and these are the movements you have to do it. It's the same thing with police officers. When they train each and every day and they have to train to keep their certifications up, they do these routines over and over again. That's why you go to the range and you practice and you pull your weapon and you reload your weapon and then you put it back in your holster. Those all become muscle memory, things that you do without really thinking about it. You just do it. Just as you know how to get a glass of water from the faucet. It's the same thing. You don't really think about it, but you do it. And it's the same kind of thing that happens at a different level in law enforcement, where officers train and train and train and train until it becomes muscle memory, till they do it actually as a reaction to a situation.
All right, very good. In other words, you train it so intensively that it becomes a part of you.
Right.
It's an automatic response.
Right.
Automatic response.
Yes.
Right. And it is built into you. You don't have to say, I do this for a work stand and 30 millimeters or so on and so forth like that. You just do it and the muscle tells you.
Right.
Okay, now, so to apply the muscle memory to a situation of that de-escalation rules for that blink of a second, for that fraction of a second, do you have, you have two memories. Your own memory, number one, which is the one that your boss tells you, say, we want to de-escalate. And number two, your body tells you, this is my muscle language, my muscle respond. And do they come together or do they come in conflict?
Oh, yes, they do. They do. I saw a case yesterday, a video that was on the news, talked about a man who had this large machete, and he was in, I assume, his front yard. And the officers really went through extraordinary effort to get that man to drop this machete, who was very threatening, aggressive, was coming towards him. But you could hear the officers saying, drop the weapon, you don't want this to happen, we don't want to hurt you. At the same time, you have officers in the background, which you don't see, who are ready to use less lethal weapons, a baton round, which they ended up using. And while one officer was doing the de-escalation part, the other officer was at the ready to find that opportunity to where, if he realized things were not going to go in the right direction, he was able to use it.
Search.
All right.
All right.
So,
in other words, de-escalation is not an overall target. It's only one of the tactics.
Right, exactly.
Right. It's not a whole thing you want to de-escalate as a goal, as your goal.
Right.
You might de-escalate for a moment to win time.
Exactly.
To win the right moment. When it comes up, you will take action.
And that's really what it comes down to. As officers get out there in a situation, if they can slow things down, if they can get the suspect to think about what they're doing instead of just reacting, that moment of time, if you can make it longer, then there are opportunities to do more de-escalation.
All right. So in movies, when you talk about ransom situation, right, and somebody takes and then a car hostage situation, and then you have always a negotiator who comes forward and say, hey guys, let's talk, something like that. Okay. You de-escalated, this person, this negotiator, de-escalated the tense.
Tries to slow down the
Try
process.
to slow down to gain some time.
Right.
And to look for the moment of attack. All right? That's good. That's good.
Or that moment where that suspect may give up, right?
Oh, yeah.
You always hope for that.
You always hope for that.
But
you always hope for that.
While you're waiting or trying to extend that time, there are many other things going around that the average person wouldn't be aware of. Officers getting into position, officers taking a tactical viewpoint of what they can do to stop this problem.
Lately, we're talking about Steve Stevenson.
Right.
Yeah, that guy, right, who took his life.
Right.
And that day, right after his death, there was a news conference by the PD, by the local PD, and the officer says, unfortunately, what happened next was that he took his own life. Right. Mr. Stevenson took his own life, like that. Right? And then other than that, everything ended up kind of like the way we wanted.
Yeah, right? It's a horrible tragedy. Right.
Now, and right after that, the radio comment says, I agree 100% with him, with the police chief, as the press release, except one thing. And it says, it's not unfortunate he ended that way. It's the most perfect way. It ended that way. He took his own life. It saves taxpayers money, all the procedures, going to court and to lock them in jail for 25 years, and so on and so forth.
We all feel maybe perhaps that way. We have our own opinions about that. And in the long run, perhaps it was the better thing. You know, a politician or a police chief probably wouldn't want to say that, but
yeah, officially they can't say that. Yeah. But the thing is that saves everybody, even saves himself.
Right.
Troubles and hustles, right? Okay, very good. So, and during that, well, in that case, Stevenson chose to kill himself. If he doesn't or he didn't, he might choose to surrender, right? Correct. And the surrender situation is always a de-escalation wanted.
Right.
Am I right?
Right.
Okay, now, my dear audience, we have de-escalation on one hand, and we have the bad laws out on the other, and in between we have criminals on the street. So my question is, what are we going to do? I'm going to ask you, and you might want to ask me. And together we ask Joe Gardner. Joe says, well, don't ask me, ask San Sacramento. So today is one of the shows, only one of the shows, we want to voice out going against the bad laws. So this is not going to be the last one. We're going to do it again. To my audience, thank you very much for watching. And to Joe, thank you very much for sharing. I really wish a day you take 150, go to Sacramento to voice out.
I would like to do that. I think it's important.